You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almin, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
The seer Almin tells us that dysfunction is the shadow that defines the light, the question that calls forth the answer. It is certainly becoming interesting, is it not? Our body, our mind, spirit, energies are all undergoing such profound changes that it's just not comfortable to be around at all any longer. We're being asked to stay as present as we possibly can during this big shift. Without the mind and the spiritual aspects, the body also may not be able to accept and accommodate what it needs and will begin to rebel. Whilst we are going through this process, it would be wise and kind to refrain from trying to judge others. Each of us have our own way of dealing, and to assume that our way is right and others are wrong may be considered intrusive. Today, we are going to be discussing all of these aspects on Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. But first of all, let's talk about reference points and what makes up happiness. We're going to do this through a song. Here we go.
Thank you so much. You know, the candles remind me of cakes, and I'd like to tell you a story about something that I did. It was something very precious to me, you know. I don't think you understand. You see, I took my very precious love and I set it out in the rain. Just like a cake, it perished. So if you love something, never destroy it. Never
you're back in studio. Greetings, everyone. It's Thursday, the 19th of April. I'm your host, Paul, and at our sound desk, as usual, is Nico. And I have challenged him to find a backtrack from that song, Donna Summer, back 1972, singing MacArthur's Park, one of my absolute favorites. If you're in with me and trying to just work with me to convince Nico to do this song so we can play it live on radio, please go into the comment box and just say, yes, Nico, now. And let's see if we can shift that dynamic a little bit. And he's just staring at me wildly through the studio window. Trouble later, but in the meantime, let's stay in the moment and work with it. Why we played that song is because, for me, as all these icons really dissolved away from their physical element and did whatever they needed to do in terms of their own journey. We've seen many of this over the last few years. It was just one after the other. And I never really had any emotion or attachment to many of them. I had an opinion. I had an experience. I said, oh, okay, wow, look at this one's gone. This one's done. Look at this, end of an era, end of a time. And I know the Sia Almin even spoke about it at some point. But the only one that I really ever felt anything about was Donna Summer when she passed away. And I remember sitting on the edge of the bed just took me a few hours just to actually process the fact that this iconic being, this incredible singer had gone. And it was only recently where I've been looking at some of the dynamics of that, where I realized that for me she was a point and a reference point for my own happiness, where my happiness lied in terms of, or lay really, I should say, in terms of, my past, growing up, going to clubs, going to parties, bopping the night away per se, really heavy, the rock and roll sex drink scene, as it was all going through in those particular years at that early age, just really what Donna Summer represented for me. And she represented a happiness point. And I think that's one of the things we need to look at is why did all of these stars also go at what is being said before their time? I don't know how long everybody's supposed to live, but maybe they're supposed to live to 150 or till we no longer need them. But that's the lesson that I've taken out of that particular song. So, thinking about what represents happiness and what we need to do in terms of our points of reference. Welcome to the show, everyone. By many accounts, it's been a really intense and I think a seriously, densely tough week for most of us. Suddenly, though, a few dense things seem to have shifted and many of us have begun to feel better from what you're telling me. We often, want to shy away or run away from these kinds of experiences as we go through such intense experiences. But that's a bit like allowing duality in our lives to continue. It's the kind of goose and gander approach and makes one relook at that eternal chicken and egg story, which comes first, which crossed the road first, etc., etc. But everyone struggles through life at times, and often we may feel left to figure out our own stuff for ourselves. And sometimes we'll also look for support in various ways from other people, from our tribe around us. We look for support in an addictive process. The Sia Almin has gone into great detail of all of this. Healing, ascension, the upliftment process can only happen when we're willing to open up and connect with each other in a shared process of evolution. And that's what I think my connection to our light family is around the globe. So welcome, is that you all let me see within myself what it is that I need to do to get into the next stepping stone of my own journey of evolution. And then it's up to me to decide to go with it. But what I recognize within you, I recognize, of course, within myself. And I think that's the authenticity of what needs to be done, is what we recognize within, we need to work on and dissolve so that we can actually be free and move forward into that new dynamic. Although, it's individual, we're all having much the same experience quite often, just at different levels of intensity. It's become abundantly clear this week that our programming, our belief systems, all play a huge role in our decisions, experiences, and outcomes in life. It becomes extremely difficult to not try to fix things that happen, and sometimes even more difficult to just simply allow changes to be made when we recognize how our inner programmings have taken us to a point where we can no longer just continue with them. But, once we have developed sufficient trust in ourselves and I suppose the cosmos and infinite expression and trust in what we have worked on, then the journey gains more clarity. And even though the games of life continue, we develop an amazing experience which we can call detachment. We begin to be able to observe and see the bigger picture and allow itself to unfold without taking it personally. My experience this last week was that I have learned what I needed to do, and so I stood my ground in a business relationship we've been working with for a whole year, and we cut it. The drama, the sulking, the running around that happened after that, not from us, was intense. One can actually see the phases of change that happened during these instances. But for myself and Nico, we've actually both said that it felt like light had entered again and that we were free of the density that we had been working with for quite a while now, because others had been battling to take control by holding their own agendas and issues at the fore and pushing them on us. So we just said no more. That was the end of that. So tonight's show is also known as Intention and Inspiration, but the title is Releasing What Limits and Binds. And tonight we're going to go investigate a lot of this and also talk about the difference between our intention and our inspiration. So let's just hold the space for all of us together for the next hour. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us tonight. I know we have a lot of new listeners coming in. That's fantastic. Welcome to the show. You're part of the family of light around the world, and we welcome you and hope that you gain a lot of, shall we say, sustenance and insight from where we are going and release what is trapped within you and just let it go. So most of us are likely feeling that this evolutionary journey is seriously pushing us right now. And most certainly we can see this in those who may not be consciously working on all of this for themselves. The Siya Al-Amin is sharing a lot about the accelerated planetary and cosmic evolutionary process that is currently flinging us around. Many of us are challenged by deep evolutionary purging, but we know that evolution also cannot be forced, even if we try. And so we're learning to see the unfolding beauty that exists instead of enduring life as we go through forced change. We just simply need to learn to hold the space and work with that infinite structure. That's all we need to do. It's a lesson. The journey is unending and has no point of arrival, so all we have to do is trust ourselves enough to completely lose our reference points, and life then shifts. AKA Donna Summer and MacArthur's Park, as we played earlier. Not sure if I'm ready to release that one yet. It's still a great, great song. That technique, that absolute ability that she has to just project energy and love is just so dynamic. But we are rebirthing, folks. We definitely are. It's challenging enough all by its own. We need to learn to own it, be it, and go into it and just let it offer what it's offering to us right now. Just let's make it a familiar process and not a strange force in our lives. It is happening, it will happen, and we are stepping into previously unknown realities and experiences. That's what we're doing on the show tonight. We're just spending an hour together so that we can look at insights, share our story, and keep our eyes fixed on the horizon whilst we work through this very moment's intense, dense experiences, which are all absolutely incredibly releasing, and we're becoming more and more aware of them. Let's listen now to what the Siya Al-Amin has in the next following few audios. She's talking about density, she's talking about the role of chaos, and she's talking about the purpose that we have within ourselves and the masks that we put up. So we'll see you on the other side of this.
Meditation. I started saying it and I somehow got waylaid here somewhere. I was speaking about what forms density. And yesterday I said density is vibration. One dense level from another is separated by the rate of vibration. But what causes vibration to be slower is the triangle, the distance between the parts, the relationship between the parts. For instance, if you are one with your higher self in purpose, you've become the I am that I am, and your higher self is one with your highest self, now, there's a very tight relationship between the three of you. Now you have very high vibration. The further away you are from your higher self, the denser it is, the lower the vibration. But there is another thing, that the infinite, which is much better than the creator, because the creator implies an act. The infinite simply is. Remember, doing is of the mind and being is just of spirit. The infinite is a much better word. Okay, the infinite has given another way to make density happen, and that is complexity. The more complex the creation, the more dense. Remember, I've been speaking about the fact that there are 10 other holodeck programs available to humankind, and there are electromagnetic manifestations that appear like other realities, 22 of those available to mankind. And they are called jewels, Jewels. So there are 32, that includes this holodeck program, 32 holodeck programs available to mankind. Meaning, if you don't like it here, okay, just go to the next one. And you do that by the shifts and maintaining the shift of your assemblage point. You can do that when you still the internal dialogue. You still the internal dialogue by erasing personal history. You know what she said this morning during the meditation? Get rid of the labels. You are no thing. Now the internal dialogue gets to this place of stillness. Now you can start to do magnificent things with that assemblage point so that you can come and go as you choose. But what separates these worlds, these holodeck programs, 32 in all available to mankind. If you go beyond that, you start to shapeshift into animals and things. But the 32 available to us are separated by vibration. And you find by density, in other words. And you find that the denser ones are the most complex. This is seriously complex living we've designed here. We're sustaining major illusions. That takes a lot of energy. And so not only do we have that, but we have this myriad of life forms. And my brothers and sisters, if you could just imagine, perhaps we can design a meditation to show us that, but if you can imagine the incredible interconnectedness of all life. We cannot pull one hair out of our head, but it affects the yak down in Mongolia or wherever yaks are. Okay, it will affect everything. That's how interrelated we are. We don't see it. If we could see that, this is a complex world we're in. The complexity has made it more dense. That's why as you raise in consciousness, life inside, it doesn't matter what you do outside, okay, but inside becomes more and more and more and more simple. It is true that it would start to affect the way your outside mirror is, because your environment is really just a mirror of who you are. But it becomes more and more simple. The innocence of the master. The innocence of just experiencing in the moment in a place of complete stillness. It's simplicity. That heightens consciousness. It heightens vibration. It heightens awareness. So there is no chaos. There is a play, shall we call it the ultimate dance, which is this issue of incorporating the unknown. In other words, there's some work in progress going on, but ultimately all is confined on the stage. All will finish in so many days' time. So there is no chaos. It was even the unknown was put there by design. It didn't happen by accident. You see how, order is permeating everything, even those little bits of unknown.
Become the all. Why is our purpose to remember to become the all? Because our purpose is that we are evolving awareness. And evolving awareness, to become that in its fullest, is inclusive in its nature. Remember, it curves. And by the way, I really like the way you drew that symbol, my sister, Yvonne. It curves. Whereas the straight line is the masculine. Inherent awareness would just keep going forever and ever, irradiating in all directions. But the evolving awareness curves it back into itself so that it becomes the tube torus. It includes. We are living, evolving awareness. At least that is what we're aiming for. Because you know what? If we are linear thinkers, and if we are still striving for a goal We are not living inherent awareness, evolving awareness. We're living inherent awareness. Inherent awareness is linear. And we are supposed to include within ourselves. If we include within ourselves all things, we are all things to all people. You know, that is why you know, it is said that you wear different masks for different people. It is just accurate on the very surface if somebody is not very observant. It isn't different masks. It's when you have become all things. If you are dealing with a certain person, they are reflecting off of you that which they are, or that which they wish to become, or that which, and so they see you, and each person sees you completely differently. And that's okay, because you have no need to prove anything.
And that was the Seer Almin talking about density, chaos, our purposes, and the masks that we put on and use in our lives. The Seer also says that honesty and authenticity are two sides of one coin. Authenticity is the honesty within the self, and honesty is the authentic expression with others. When I read this post earlier this week, I thought, wow, I actually have not been expressing authentically within myself. Very, very interesting process along the way. But of course, then as one began to work through things, we begin to express on a more authentic level. And of course, now this is why one feels lighter and less dense. So there's an idea. If there's a lot of density going on within you, perhaps you are not living on some level of authenticity or honesty within yourself and expressing as such, because really at such dense times, it's easy to strike out. It's easy to, say things and do things that are all programmed behavior. And we've been experiencing that as incoming calls and messages, but not acceptable for us. So that has been cut. Feeling free to be yourself is really the greatest gift that you can give yourself. Because life, as it awakens in the world that we know now, is demanding that we respond in ways that are very different than what we have always known. We are being asked to live in present time and just keep bringing ourselves back into the sacredness of this moment, because the present is our only place of power. It is here that we live from our heart and where we can use our voice to speak, that internal voice or the external voice that results. But it's only when we're in harmony with our evolving state of being will we ever feel free. It's an enormous process of growth that we need to work with to be able to expand, to live into our hearts and, live from that inspiration of our being. The trust that has developed within myself, for example, I see as an extension of infinite unfolding within me, and it brings me into the present time, because that's all any of us truly, truly have. It's only here that I can receive the truth of my beingness, and I suppose doingness at the same time. And the truth within me is the freedom that I desire, and I need to authentically express the truth that I have at this moment. Another decision that is being asked of us is to take down the barriers that are preventing us from expressing the fullness of our being. And in other words, we need to learn to be the most authentic self we can be in this world. Not only does this require us to live in our hearts, we also need to demonstrate huge, massive, great courage. This authentic part of us is our most sacred essence, something that we may have protected for lifetimes. Now is the time that we are being asked to bring that true, authentic, and beautiful essence forward. Yes, of course, we still need to have discernment and be grounded enough to know when someone can either receive us or even try to deceive us. Sometimes radiating love whilst being silent may be the most powerful and authentic thing that we can do. Recognizing when we are being asked to speak our deepest truth is also an important part of our growth process. Feeling free to just be ourselves also requires that we give ourselves permission to open our hearts fully, and that is just a mammoth task all by itself, ongoing journey. When our heart closes, then just ask yourself, are you living from a state of intention, which I liken to a place of instinct, or are you living from inspiration? And that's one of the lessons that I've learned this week, is that through this whole, this whole process that Nick and I have been experiencing, we actually came in with a very beautiful, open intention, and again, around our programming of working together to benefit everybody and grow a whole structure, incredibly exciting and dynamic. But then as everybody allowed more familiarity into the particular process, then really what happened, everybody's agendas came up in terms of their beliefs and programmings and their needs. And we began to see all of this. So slowly the whole thing began to unravel and separate. But we're now in the final separation of it all, because we just really don't want to live in the energy and frequency of, having to live anybody else's agenda, but still having to work within and on ourselves. And that has been a huge, big thing. So, I'm just talking to our family of light, our light family around the world. I'm talking to you, talking to me, talking to Nick here in the studio, just to see if you can look within yourself and just see when you are working on something. Are you coming from that state of living from the heart, living from that inspired state, or are you living from a state of intention? And if you're living from a state of intention, that there could be a lot of programming, a lot of belief system there, a lot of need to be the center of something, to receive love, to be part of a bigger whole. Look at all of that particular process within yourself and then release it, because that is also instinctual in nature. And I know there's lots of teachings about spiritual instinct and how we should use it and trust our gut and things like that. And that's all involved in this particular process. But it's very, very interesting, the lightness that comes when you learn to stand your ground and you just say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to work from a state of intention anymore. And simply, how do we identify that? How do we know that we are that we need to change something? Well, it's simple. It's when you're no longer inspired to do something, it's because you may be trapped, you may not be expressing authentically, you may not being allowed to express yourself authentically. And remember, when we say expression, there's flashes of anger come up. That's what it is. There's flashes of love come up. That's what it is. And it's so interesting just looking at the dynamic of where we are at and really not judging the process, but just looking at the bigger picture. What we're doing is we're now receiving messages from, some members of these parties who have their own spiritual path and their own spiritual following. I mean, that's great for them, but the messages of love and light that we are receiving are not coming in terms of something that we're going, that's not really supportive. That's just looking for another dynamic and looking for a way in again. Because this dynamic that we've been working, this platform that we've been creating is very, very big. It is life-changing, and everyone's involved. Anyway, what we've done is simply put it out there and given a time frame for it to come together with an alternative suggestion. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's up to everybody to decide what they would like to live and work with it and take equal, responsibility for themselves and for the bigger project. But what a big hoo-ha, what a lot of density we've been experiencing. And so just remember, the biggest gift we can give ourselves is feeling free. And that might not be the thing where we have to lock ourselves away in solitude, pretending that we are in silence and things like that. There is a big world out there, and we need to live in it, and we need to look at the environment around us to decide literally what it is that we need to learn, and allow the world to teach us and be ready to learn that particular lessons. So, look for all these actions that are agenda-driven, and look for all of that. Malui Wittersrose wrote in November 2012 about being authentic. And it's a beautiful way that she's expressed this. She's saying is that being the authentic you is one of the greatest gifts you can bring to the table. One of the biggest challenges in terms of reaching that part of yourself that lies beneath all the layers of personality, fear, and distorted patterns. I've always longed so deeply in my heart to find the real me and to connect with what I thought and felt that I had lost my oneness with Source. Of all the teachings out there, all the gurus, all the New Age spirituality, nothing ever really helped me make that quantum leap that I knew was possible. It actually only helped me realize that I'm not like them. You're not like them, or any other for that matter. Our uniqueness really didn't dawn upon me until I truly got that there are no reference points. And therefore there's no need to compare, to judge or value one another, much less attempt to control outcome. From trying to identify with the outside world to losing all labels of identity is quite a journey, and I'm truly enjoying it, although it can evoke deep-seated fear sometimes. Perhaps if you're new to Almin's teachings, or you may battle with the usage of language if it's not your first language, or you're just not familiar with this level of advanced metaphysics and metaphysical information, you might worry, you might think that this is not for you. You might feel inadequate because you just don't understand it very well. And this is Malubi speaking. She says, I can tell you, as a very left-brain oriented person, letting go of my mind and its tyranny has both been a challenge and such a blessing. The need to understand and the need to know what has been a major driving force in my life, so much that I couldn't even begin to understand the scope of depth of what a more feeling-based existence can bring about. So, how does one combine releasing the need to know, learning and remembering who you are at the same time? And how do you release the feeling of not being smart enough to understand the teachings? I know for myself, I often get messages and connections from a few people around the world. The same thing, they just don't understand what we're talking about, and they don't know where to begin with it, and can I help them? And so we have some good discussions about that. So, many of Almin's books and courses are also translated into various language, so that people can enjoy it all over the world. But Malubi says just by feeling into the material will have a profound effect on each person. All of Almin's materials have so many layers to it and work on many planes behind the scenes, so to speak. It is accessible through multiple senses, so whether your mind can grasp it or not, or you cognitively understand the words written or spoken, the information, the frequencies, the wisdom and age-old secrets will be assimilated into your being. The illusions will fall away if you'll let it. So people carry bits and pieces from online courses with them in their purses and wallets. Some have a book under their bed at night. Some use power wheels and sigils on a daily basis and have them all posted up on their walls. They also use the exquisite fragrant oils that help us remember our origins. So Malubi says that one of the things that Almin and her teachings has really empowered her to do is to recognize truth, to feel the resonance of it, to trust the infinite and surrender to the fluid unfolding of the dance of existence. When you are prepared to release your fears, all that you thought you knew, and begin to embrace a new way of being, even if it means that you lose yourself, wonderful things then start to happen, and the true you starts to emerge. The author and healer Eckhart Tolle says that if you can recognize illusion as illusion, it dissolves. The recognition of illusion is also its ending. Its survival depends on your mistaking it for reality. Isn't that amazing how we can actually connect all of that processes together, and it really connects where we are going with tonight. So my friend Hilda De La Rosa is a wonderful healer, wonderful author, and I've known her for many, many years, and I've just been watching a lot of her humor as she writes particular posts online and how she just weaves and dabs through her day and just ponders things on such a deep level. And she says that the habits that you created to survive will no longer serve you when it's time to thrive. And she says she's not sure whose quote that is, but she loves it. Now, she has a book out. It's called Love versus Fear. It's available on Amazon. You can also go to her Facebook and just join her for these great insights and life as it evolves and how to work with it. And, Hilda's not a regular poster of spiritual wisdom and content. She just shares her life and her experiences as she sits and contemplates and allows all of these reflections and, I suppose, points of perception just to fall away so that what comes underneath is just an authenticity of herself. And I really appreciate just having that connection with her. So we've got a little excerpt from what she posted up this morning. It's about Love versus Fear by Hilda and about the habits that we created to survive. So let's listen to her now.
I read a quote this morning that said, the habits you create to survive will no longer serve you when it's time to thrive. I can't really be sure who quoted that because it seems to have different sources on Google, but I love it anyway. It outlines beautifully that what we did 10 years ago or 20 years ago, even yesterday, may no longer serve us, especially if we are in a position where we require a different result. I was lying in bed this morning thinking of most people's relationships, and especially those relationships that have ended. I wondered about other persons, not you in particular, the other person, the one you broke up with. I wondered if they were sitting with regret, thinking that they let the best thing that ever happened to them go, Or they're also grateful that your relationship is over. If that person regrets losing the best thing that ever happened to them, you did something right. But if they feel relieved that it's over, you did not really bring to the relationship the stuff that it would have made it survive, or even better yet, thrive. We rarely bring our best game to relationships. If both parties brought their best stuff, it can truly be glorious. I've experienced that. We think that we will have great relationships when we bring mediocre stuff to our relationships. And more often than not, we don't even bring the mediocre stuff. We bring plain bad stuff to our relationships, like sarcasm or unkindness, or we dash out instructions or judgments or resentments or blame, and many more of that kind of stuff. We bring this old dead stuff into our relationships, and we expect in return to get passion and respect and harmony and honor and love and joy in return. How bizarre is that? Maybe we should define the kind of relationship that we really desire, and then find a partner that's seeking the same thing. And let's talk about how this utopian relationship can be achieved. Everyone that I've ever met desires a relationship filled with honor and respect and kindness and gentleness and passion and understanding and fun. Everyone. Yet most of the time we bring sarcasm and blame and pettiness and unkindness and stuff like that to our relationships. And then we're surprised that our relationships are mediocre, or even worse than mediocre. If we wish to have a different kind of a relationship, we need to bring a different game to our relationships, because the game we brought to our relationships that didn't work is the reason why those relationships ended from both sides. Yet we are so habituated by our mediocre stuff that we bring to our relationship game that we are blind that our habituated mediocre stuff gives us more of the same. It gives us relationships that are dysfunctional and unhappy. Yet we fail to work out that if we want a different result, we need to bring a different game. But as you know, habits are hard to break, and few have really got the courage to live life on the road less traveled. But wait a minute. A couple of years ago, somebody told me, when I suggested this type of relationship to them, they said, "Hilda, this is not the road less traveled. There is no road. We have to build a completely new road." Yes, we do. If we want relationships to thrive, we need to have a new way to conduct them, a completely new way.
And there we were listening to the beautiful healer and author, Hilda de la Rosa, talking about the habits that we created to survive will no longer serve us when it's time to thrive. And these are all based around the beautiful book that she's written, Love versus Fear, which is available on Amazon. Go to her Facebook too and connect, as I said earlier. Last week we spoke about how Almeen was talking about to heal the cause of all war. And if you look up at the latest post that's come up this evening on almeendiary.com, she talks about how nuclear war between India and Pakistan has been averted. Very deep, deep stuff. The question, though, that was posed to Almeen earlier last week was, "Dear Almeen, earlier you talked about the environment giving us challenges. That this is happening because some aspects of us have not awakened yet. They are still in the dream." And talking about the ceremony that's coming, the online ceremony will be dedicated to peace on earth. At first glance, it may seem like regulating international and political conflicts, but as it turns out, it is directly connected to awakening our sensual nature. May I ask you to explain more specifically how and why peace on earth can be so directly connected to our senses being fully activated? Almeen answers that we have had to find the origin of self-conflict within. The sensual experience of our environment becomes stronger with our progression through each of our evolutionary stages of dreaming and awakening. The fourth stage of the dream and the fourth stage of an awakening then try to suppress it. This creates inner conflict, providing us with something to solve within as a proxy for world conflict. The truth is that excuse me, let me restart that. The truth is that the May webinar called Mastery of the Unfathomable actually discovers the root of conflict and opposition found upon our eternal journey. But this ceremony is, of course, time sensitive. It has to be done on the exact date we're doing it. And this is because of the way that the cosmic time map traces the beginnings of unfolding trends that lead to events in the future. But to heal the cause of all war requires a great deal of advanced metaphysical knowledge that the May webinar will also supply. In the meantime, we can use a secondary cause of inner conflict to power the ceremony. Talk about not being able to work with hidden agendas, even if those agendas are just driven by programs and beliefs. As a master, it is our very function to release and dissolve all programming so that we can live as free as an eagle, and it's become abundantly clear that we cannot escape having to do so. One cannot be trapped by others because our very survival depends on it. And there the whole show comes together in terms of the link. We should be stepping into a state of thriving, not just surviving. That last paragraph is my words. In this preview now of Becoming a Master of High Magic Part 2, the Seer Almin translates a page from the Book of Secrets. She explains the importance of inspired action and how the presence of agenda turns the environment into a mirror, thereby perpetuating the opposite of what was intended, for instance, in making money, etc. And this audio is really a direct reflection of what we have been experiencing as a mirror in our environment. It's so incredibly spot on. I'm just taken away by what we are experiencing and knowing that all of you are experiencing it in your own way. But let's listen to Almin as she talks about actions that are agenda-driven will create an opposite manifestation. Here we go.
On page 25, it says, when actions are agenda-driven, they create an opposite manifestation of what was intended, because our environment becomes a mirror. Now that is very interesting, because humanity has been taught, you set your goal and then you back it up with actions that lead to that goal. And so their actions are agenda-driven, and so very often they create the opposite of what they intended. If their intent is to make money, then they do in fact have less money. So actions that are agenda-driven create an opposite manifestation. This is really important for us to understand, because at this point, beloved ones, if you were in an earlier stage, I would tell you, briefly look at the goal you want to attain and then focus with passion on doing the steps that lead you to it. But you are so far beyond that stage. So at this point, I have to say, simply live passionately with what is before you. It is in accepting what you have that it increases and supplies even more delight into your life. Now, Stechva Uhuravi is the angel, it's actually angel god, of inspired actions. So the fact that his name is there tells us already what's written below. It says below, it says, inspiration begets flourishing. Okay, so your life flourishes when you live from an inspired perspective. And now see, let's take a look at this intent of what you want to reach, the goal. So how do you get to your goal? By just following the inspiration that you have. If you get your goal, you have limited yourself. inspired action it provides so much more than the goal that you are seeking, beyond what you can imagine. So it gives you a bigger outcome than an outcome you would have set for yourself and tried to reach. That is the result of inspired actions. Now we go into another topic on page 25, which is different but not different.
You're back in studio with myself, Paul, as your host. Thursday, the 18th of April. Nico is on the sound desk. Everything's running beautifully and smoothly tonight. And thank you for staying with us. We appreciate it. Thanks for your comments. Yes, Jack, I agree with you. It's time Nico did a full version of that song by Donna Summer. And there I go, holding on to my points of reference of past happiness. But you know what? We'll work on that so long as we're aware of it. The Seer Almin was there speaking about the hidden agendas, and really incredible what we've been seeing, and just being able to put all of these teachings and our trust into place and just let it unfold. Wherever it will go, it must go. We're going to keep going with it. I'm sure you recognize this for yourself. Last week, Almin talked about accelerated evolution. She talks about how the planet, the diverse creatures are all undergoing accelerated evolution, and she's seeing this in all the tools that are being produced. Talking about the online gatherings, talking about the ceremony of peace, talking about fragrance alchemy, and new formulas coming in for the healing oils that she is producing. She says that we must be aware, because these holy tools are in a unified field. They could also be called one-mindedness and one-heartedness. The properties of the ones that you may already have will change as well. It's much the same as we have experienced with our Belvaspata healing modality. It evolves as reality does. But it is always potent, never obsolete, because it was given as a gift to us directly from the infinite. Almin also talks about what produces happiness, and we'll look at that in the upcoming Mastery of the Unfathomable online courses, where the seer will discuss the metaphysics of happiness when our reference points upon which happiness has hitherto depended fallen away. There we go. Eckhart Tolle says, don't look for any other state than the one you are in now. Otherwise, you will set inner conflict and unconscious resistance into place. Forgive yourself for not being at peace. The moment you completely accept your non-peace, then your non-peace becomes transmuted into peace. Anything you accept fully will get you there. It will take you into peace. This is the miracle of surrender. And we all know that surrender is one of the immense ascension attitudes of eternal evolution taught within the teachings and healing of the modality we call Belvaspata. Also up, the middle crossover point, very interesting, is that there's a video doing the rounds of where parts of Africa, the east coast of it, is separating from the mainland, and there's big cracks up in the Great Rift Valley, 50 feet cracks coming up into place there, and how it is science perceives that it's going to be moving away from the continent more rapidly than normal continental shift will do. But yes, the cracks are appearing, things are shifting, but then we get into the dynamic of the masculine and the feminine. We get into the dynamic of discussion of the inner child and all the other sub-personalities. Please refer to other shows that we have broadcast over the past few weeks about all of that. But the question comes up about the middle crossover point. Question given to the seer, is there a cosmic reason the Song of the Rose has been taken off the market? The seer replies, in Masters of the Unfathomable Part 2, the dysfunctional way in which the sub-personalities have been used, as well as the imbalance of their masculine, is discussed. This has played an important part in causing physical inflammation and autoimmune disease as the body fights with itself. The sublime gift of the sub-personalities will be revealed so that their higher calling can be restored. The Song of the Rose has been removed from the website because it has a missing note. The alchemy of all the oils has been redone, except the fragrance alchemy for the subpersonalities, which represents the vertical and horizontal axis of cosmic evolution, and the Song of the Rose. They were waiting for me to uncover a huge piece of the higher function of the subpersonalities that had been missing. And at the time of writing that, she said she will mix their oils today. The question says, but the Song of the Rose isn't for an actual subpersonality. Where does it fit in? Almin responds, imagine the 8 subpersonalities as a cross with 2 groups of 4, 1 on each axis. The Song of the Rose is a fragrance that is located right in the middle crossover point, which then benefits all subpersonalities. It will be available again with its missing element in a week and will be released as a special for Mother's Day. So this is an important point of the journey that we have all got to, that we need to realize that the extreme density, the extreme tension, the stress, the exhaustion levels that many of us are going, it's just sometimes impossible to keep our eyes open, and timing is shifting. It's just, the dynamic is absolutely massive. And as we just stand centered in the storm of all of that, excuse me, we need to really look at these dynamics of, as the middle crossover point is now achieved, we are bringing it all into one particular aspect so that it can blossom as a rose again. And now as the seer has alchemically begun to mix a lot of these dynamics, a lot of these things into place, as that healing oil's missing note is placed in, things begin to come right for us in terms of we see things in a different way, we see the bigger picture, we can trust ourselves more to let go of everything, and we'll see that a life of no opposites indeed begins to dissolve, and we begin to express that infinite one life, which I think is the mainstream teaching of many, many spiritual teachings. But of course, through the teachings of the Seer Almin, she defines these in different ways. But I think ultimately that's what everybody is wishing for. But everybody plays their own little role, and a new note is now arriving in terms of cosmic ascension, and that is being mixed into the whole play of life. And so the drama of life begins to change. How can we possibly work with anything that's got agendas, anything that's got hidden intentions? How can we possibly not be authentic? And all of these things are going to be purging through us. So let's work on all of that. Right, let's just bring Almin back in for the next few minutes. She's going to talk about living in eternal time. And we think this is such a powerfully beautiful audio and class from her as she talks about living in the present moment.
How you start to line up the center of your spider web with universal spider web is by knowing that every second that you live, eternity is based on it. The simple New Age lingo, living in the moment. Okay? So that is the one way. There are times when that occurs, and eventually it becomes more and more and more that way, that you start to live in eternal time. My brothers and sisters, once you start to live in eternal time, you are making your break for freedom, and life can never, ever be the same again. Once you have brushed with eternal time, you look at seconds differently. Once you look at seconds differently, you access eternal time. How to make decisions when you don't have linear time is a very difficult concept. Now, there's this decision in front of me. How do I make the decision? When suddenly you realize there's nothing worth getting, in other words, there's not a goal, there's not a destination, it's the quality of the journey. What happens is the tendency to slow down and slow down and slow down more, until eventually you sit in yogic position in complete bliss, where while next to you on the streets the kids are suffering and dying, and so what? You're in eternal bliss. This is not the life of an impeccable warrior. And this is what is called succumbing to the challenge of old age, meaning that you think you have arrived. The challenge, once you get to that point where activity becomes almost meaningless, is that you start to look at what it is you wish to line over your spider web. See, we've got an overhead projector going here, right? We have universal spider web, We're one line in that spider web. But we're not really a line, because I've told you guys many times we are a consciousness superimposed over all that is, which means we have our own little spider web going here. And we're superimposed over all that is. We line up by lining up time. When that happens, we're no longer out on the end of that axle of time and space, so we're no longer in linear time. We've actually walked from our thread way back there, which is anchored by the body, we've walked into the center. Now time is different. So now how do we decide what we have to do when we see that everything is in perfection and nothing motivates us anymore? Well, like this. Every probable future is also a spider web. And the ones we decide to live, the moments we decide to live, we simply stack on top of our spider web on the overhead projector. And so with each new one we superimpose over the top, Creator's spider web becomes more intricate and more beautiful, and we fulfill our destiny as evolving awareness on behalf of inherent awareness. I have always said that to judge something as right or wrong, or even to try and right a wrong with, this diligence inside, it judges and divides. Whereas if you acknowledge wholeness, it uplifts. It doesn't mean don't do charity work. It means do it like all work without attachment to outcome. This place of no time that you enter like at an accident scene, okay? It is the place to enter when you are in the thick of battle. Let's say you are in combat with a situation, with whatever. It's actually not the situation that's the combat. It is always the flaw within that manifested that situation. That is the important point to remember. That what you combat is that which caused that mirror to exist. Now, when you're in the thick of battle, that's the time you enter this place of no time. This place like at an accident scene where time is slowed and everything is slowed down so that you can view every single detail. In an accident scene, do you weigh what would be the best to do? No. You automatically duck as something is coming at you through the windshield. You automatically push a child down so that they duck as well. Your actions are automatic. Why? Because you've just aligned your time more fully with the center time. You've just, for a second, shifted your snowflake a little bit more across the original snowflake. And so, for a minute, all actions are effortless. All time ceases to exist. You don't need to think what to do, because the river of life is lined up now, and that light can shine right through you, so your actions are automatic. And that is why, when you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm the whole snowflake. When you start to realize that you're out of the fishbowl, time starts to just not be there anymore.
And there the Seer Al-Amin was talking about living in eternal time. Absolutely beautiful insight, and working with the dynamics of the power of all of that. So we are running a little bit late on the show. Forgiveness for that. I'm not going to mention about the signal availability or even let the Wi-Fi system hear those particular words. Last week we got cut a little bit earlier, or we didn't even have a show last week because of it, and the week before we got cut earlier. So please, let's make it up for the next few minutes. Just to finish off our show, I'd like to talk about the latest retrograde that has been going on Saturn stations in Capricorn with a retrograde. This is the Starcast for April the 18th. How is this for dynamic up to the date moment on an astrological level, and hits straight into the heart of reality? So, the comment here on Starcast is that Saturn in Capricorn stations retrograded today, which was Tuesday, April the 17th, in the traditional Capricorn, where he will be retrograde for over 4 months, during which time you will be reworking your reality in some way. You will have reached your limit in a key area of your life and will want to rebel against anything that feels to be weighing you down or holding you back. Go get 'em. You may feel driven to throw off the burdens and the weight of responsibility that you feel over and done with carrying so you can recover more of your vital self. It is time to return to the root of your essence and work to rebuild your life from there. We are just on the heels of a new moon in Aries, which was conjunct radical with radical Uranus, and today we have Saturn stationary retrograde. And this is written by Kristen Fontana, who's an astrologist. And she says, when was the last time you tried something for the first time? Remember that there's a high degree of concentration and focus on your home and the people who share that space, as Saturn shifts retrograde in Capricorn and Mars brings plenty of energy into this realm. Saturn will be retro until late August, which will have you either emotionally preparing for a new reality or you'll be working on the structure and the land where you dwell. Undoubtedly, there will be deep changes going on either emotionally or in your outer reality, and it will require you to step up and dig in within. Fortunately, your ruler, loving Venus, throws you a bone as she enters fellow air sign Gemini on Tuesday, April the 24th. And for the next 3 weeks, you may be the deserving recipient of some good news, financial or otherwise, and it will have you feeling more confident about the future. Mercury is marching along again in your home of relationships, so you may be feeling greater progress there too. Perhaps because of witnessing some of the changes you've voiced that you needed to see occur. The suggestion is to stoke those fires and the change will happen more swiftly. So not something we really often work on here astrologically, but doesn't it fit in so perfectly? And I think, Sujata, thank you very much for posting that this week up on Facebook. We've taken it, owned it, and broadcast it. Right, time for some poetry now, just as we begin to end of the show. Let's listen to this beautiful thing. I think, this also came from one of our light families, Deva Priya. I think it was you that posted up about the journey from Mary Oliver, but here it is in audio form.
The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations. Though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world. Determined to do the only thing you could do. Determined to save the only life you could save.
And that was the poem, The Journey by Mary Oliver. Beautiful work, lots of it on YouTube if you want to go find it, lots of it on the internet, beautifully spoken. So one of the most important things that we can do during this shift is just to be ourselves. There's always going to be others that may attempt to tear us down, to judge our looks, our thoughts, the way we do stuff, our way of living, blah, blah. They will take time out of their day to tell you that you're doing something wrong or you're not clearing your stuff the proper way. we are here to tell you tonight really that you're just probably doing everything right for you, and just own that. If you allow it, there will always be those who will project or counter-project onto you. But as always, you have a choice. You can accept it or not. The only person you must please and be at peace is with yourself. The Seer Almin says, to be authentic is to be true to one's unique expression as an individual. It is to speak and live one's truth in the silence of the mind. It is to act without the weight of self-reflection, knowing that all things are divine, all acts are acts of the infinite working through us. Authenticity is therefore free of social conditioning, the attitude of a master who creates truth in each moment without fear of persecution. Authenticity is living freely and truly from the heart, and creating without boundaries or restrictions based on our unique expression. That's the Seer Almin. Thank you, Jack, for the beautiful WhatsApp just received about love is about letting go of fear. And there we are back into that journey of hashtag, moving from fear into love and living with all of that. And we'll be discussing this on next week's show. I have a special guest who's just come back from Switzerland for a few weeks to join us. Sarah will be joining us as we talk about this journey of enlightenment, and we'll talk about all the aspects of dynamic unfolding and learning how to trust ourselves in the reality of this condition of living a life on earth and in the cosmos. Our new Instagram address is belvaspita_ZA. We believe there is a problem with Instagram at the moment, so we'll try and get that running. Our new website is starting to be built. Lots of beauty coming in over there. Many, many different ways to find us. Go onto our Facebook page if you like, Belvaspita South Africa. You'll see there's a new video just been uploaded with all the ways you can connect with us. Really incredible, actually, when we look at all the dynamics of all of that in place. And then we're going to just say goodbye for tonight, but we're going to play out with an incredible song from the movie The Greatest Showman. Keala Settle sings the song. It's This Is Me. But, I saw an interview with her where she really battled to do the song. She was a great singer. She was a performer. And then the actor Hugh Jackman was in the show with her, and he made her go and do the song and work with it. And it has become a huge, massive hit with many people doing cover songs with it. And she's absolutely beautiful in her expression of the song, the passion, the love. If you see it on YouTube, etc., really incredible. Go have a look. And I just think she's living so much authentically, and she was given permission to do that. And now she's taken that permission and she's touring the world with a Oscar-nominated song. Here is Keala Settle with This Is Me from the team here, myself and Nico. Goodbye. I nearly said welcome again. Goodbye. Diana's just come back from Berlin. She'll be sending us some audios and be with us over the next few weeks. But in the meantime, Michelle has escaped to Croatia. How is that for world travelers? But never mind, we're going to have our own travel coming up soon, but we'll tell you about that in a week or two as we develop it. And here we go. Love, praise, gratitude, and trust. See you next week as we discuss the principles of enlightenment and how to put them into place. This is Keala Settle with This Is Me. Good night.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me. Gonna send a blood, gonna drown a mind. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching up to the beat I drum. To the beat I still. To be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. Whenever the words wanna cut me down, I send the blood to drown them out. This is me.
You've been listening to Radio Belvaspita, South Africa. Thank you for listening and sharing in our discussion. Should you have any questions with regards to the healing modality of Belvaspita or have any healing needs, please send us an email to info@belvaspita.co.za or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.